Earlier this offseason, when the Chicago Bulls traded all-defensive mainstay and fan favorite Alex Caruso to the OKC Thunder in exchange for incoming fourth-year guard Josh Giddey, most NBA analysts expressed their thoughts about how the Bulls front office made a terrible decision. Although the thing is, most of these analyses you'd hear probably focused on how Chicago couldn't extract a single draft pick from an OKC team that owns the biggest draft stash in NBA history, all while not necessarily addressing what kind of player the Bulls actually got back in Josh Giddey. Well, just to put it out there, as a Thunder fan, I definitely believe that the addition of Caruso just solidified OKC's claim as championship contenders. However, I'm also aware that almost every time a trade looks lopsided on the surface, it actually turns out to be much more of a win-win situation when you look at it many years down the line. Sure, Caruso is widely seen as the significantly better player right now, but even if you would argue that the Bulls overpaid to acquire Giddey, you still have to ask a couple of questions, such as how high is Josh Giddey's potential, and how good of a fit could he really become for Chicago? And the fact that the Bulls front office overplayed their hand by not receiving any additional assets together with Giddey despite him entering free agency next season definitely signals that Chicago plans to re-sign him to a long-term extension and that they believe in what he can become in the future, which potential could easily be justified. In fact, after his first two NBA seasons, Giddey was actually seen to be on track for a potential max extension this summer of 2024, as in his second season, Giddey averaged more than 16 points, almost 8 rebounds, and more than 6 assists per game, making him only the third player in NBA history to put up those numbers aged 20 or younger, alongside Magic Johnson and Luka Doncic. However, last season, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having an MVP caliber year, with Jalen Williams' emergence as OKC's number 2 scoring option, and with the arrival of a healthy Chet Holmgren, Giddey saw himself as an odd fit in OKC's changing roster, which caused his minutes, his shot attempts, and his overall role with the team to drop significantly. But still, that doesn't change the fact that Giddey is just 21 years old and is someone who's averaged at least 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists for 3 straight years, all while starting a total of 210 regular season games for a young OKC roster, who at 6'8" has also shown impressive stretches as a primary ball handler and playmaker. So what's good everyone, it's Real Balls here, and in this video, let's talk about why the Chicago Bulls won't necessarily have to end up as the losers of the Josh Giddey trade. So let's get to it. Well, for sure, Josh Giddey isn't the most plug-and-play fit for the Chicago Bulls, who last season were a bottom 10 3-point shooting team both in terms of volume and efficiency, with Giddey not being a good outside shooter himself. Last season, he only ranked in the 33rd and 36th percentile of the league in terms of 3-point shooting efficiency and volume respectively, which is why in a playoff setting, or even in the regular season for that matter, the best teams are comfortable leaving him open to far away from behind the arc, which one way or the other could clog the paint for his teammates. But as a Thunder fan myself, I've definitely seen Giddey display some impressive month-long outside shooting stretches in the past where he shot above 40% from 3, although not consistently. But also, thanks to OKC's new shooting coach Chip England, after just converting 26% of his wide-open 3-point attempts during his first 2 years, last season, Giddey actually made almost 35% of those wide-open 3-pointers. So, looking at his year-to-year progression, I think there's definitely a path for Giddey to be at least a solid 37 to 38% 3-point shooter, although for sure, his outside shooting remains a swing skill right now. So in Chicago, instead of relegating him to the same spot-up role he played in OKC last season, you would instead want to put the ball in his hands pretty much the majority of his time on the floor. And if you're the Bulls, playing Giddey at his natural point guard position is what you want to do to get the best out of this guy who's consistently ranked in at least the top 85th percentile of the NBA in terms of assist rate and assists per 100 possessions during his entire career, in order to utilize his elite court vision and creative passing, as well as his 6'8" frame, which allows him to see over taller defenders and to hunt for mismatches on the floor. So in Chicago, I think an ideal role for Giddey would be that of a playmaking guard and a secondary shot creator who you could use next to volume scorers who could shift playing on and off the ball, like Coby White and Zach Lavine, which is a role he didn't get to play in OKC as of late. But even if he did get to do that in OKC consistently, I think there's still a higher chance of him succeeding as a primary facilitator in Chicago, as Zach Lavine and Coby White seem to be more equipped to fill a more off-ball role next to him than either one of SGA or Jalen Williams. Well, looking at it, sure, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams are capable spot-up shooters, who over the past 2 years have converted a solid 36 and 37% of their wide-open three-pointers respectively. But Zach Lavine and Coby White converted those shots at much higher percentages of 45 and 43% on similar volume as OKC star tandem. Though it would be good for Coby White to receive more on-ball reps, the Josh Giddey trade just effectively forced White back into playing his more natural role off the ball as a shooting guard, which should afford Giddey some much-needed room to operate with the ball. And looking at it, for much of last season, despite Coby White getting better operating off a live dribble, some of his best offensive moments still came when he was spotting up from the perimeter when DeMar Derozan had the ball in his hands. So I think there's no reason Billy Donovan won't run a similar configuration with his new Josh Giddey and Coby White backcourt. Although, because Josh Giddey isn't a three-point shooting threat, in a Chicago team that lacks shot creators of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's caliber, it would be important for Giddey to create proper driving lanes to attract defenders in the paint for him to be able to create open looks for his teammates. And for a 6'8" guy, you'd probably expect Giddey to do that by attacking the rim a ton of times, but last season, only 28% of his total shot attempts came within 3 feet of the basket. Well, it's not like Giddey's afraid of contact, and it's not like he's not capable of making tough shots with either hand out of complicated angles at the basket. In fact, Giddey shot a league average 67% at the rim last season in half-court situations. But it's just that Giddey's more adept in terms of operating from the short mid-range area where he took more than 1/3 of his shots last season. From around 10 feet of the basket, he's very comfortable putting his shoulders into his defender's chest before launching his go-to push floater or a mid-range jumper, which is capable of converting even against some bigger wings. In fact, last season, Giddey converted 42% of his attempts from within 3 to 10 feet, ranking in the 82nd percentile of the entire NBA. Good thing is, in Chicago, Giddey can continue looking for those kinds of in-between shots by operating out of those guard-to-guard actions that Billy Donovan loves to run, which should be able to get Giddey and Coby White's defender switched depending on the matchup. The only problem is that settling for those types of mid-range attempts rarely allows Giddey to draw contact. In fact, despite him being a good free throw shooter, he's only averaged around 1.5 free throw attempts per game for his entire career. So in Chicago, I think it would be ideal for Giddey to become more aggressive in terms of getting deep in the paint even more, not just to draw more shooting fouls, but again, for him to create more wide open looks for some of the Bulls' high-level catch-and-shoot guys, like Patrick Williams, Lonzo Ball, and even new addition Jalen Smith, who shot 42% from deep last season as a stretch big man. And of course, also for Giddey to generate more lob opportunities for guys such as Zach Lavine and Matas Buzelis. While you're obviously not expecting Giddey to be a volume scorer right off the bat or to draw fouls at a massive rate as DeMar Derozan does, but getting more high percentage looks at the basket should just really help Giddey enhance his superb playmaking even more. But then, moving on to the defensive side of the ball, most analysts consider Giddey as a mediocre defender at best. Well, sure, he lacks lateral quickness and he doesn't generate a ton of turnovers, but Giddey has actually shown potential to be a strong positional rim protector, using his 6'8" frame and advanced timing and defensive instincts. Last season, Giddey actually registered a 2% block percentage, which is the third highest mark by any guard and which ranks in the 62nd percentile of the entire NBA, giving him practically the same block percentage as defensive-oriented forwards like Keegan Murray and Kelly Oubre. Plus, Giddey's other defensive indicators from the paint look good as well. He ranks in the 71st percentile in terms of shots defended within 6 feet of the basket and in the 75th percentile in terms of percentage points difference on contested shots in the paint. And we're talking about the entire NBA and not just big men. Basically, Giddey is a better positional defender than he's given credit for, and him playing guard for Chicago just gives them paint protection at a position you don't normally get it from, which means the Bulls can use other positions to prioritize in defense, which should allow them to put more floor spacing around Giddey. Also, Giddey has always been a strong rebounder, especially for a guard, who's averaged more than 7 rebounds for his entire career. Well, last season, because of a drop in playing time, he averaged a career-low 6.4 rebounds per game, but that's still practically the same as what power forwards like Aaron Gordon and Jeremy Sohan averaged. Overall, Giddey just has a great nose for the ball and is very competitive off the glass, and more importantly, with his advanced court vision, playmaking ability, and downhill burst, after grabbing rebounds, Giddey will be able to quickly initiate fast break scoring chances for Chicago. This should introduce a different dynamic to this Bulls team, who ranked dead last in terms of transition possessions and frequency last season. But above anything else, Giddey should provide that much needed help for Nikola Vucevic on the rebounding end, especially after the departure of Andre Drummond. While in trading Alex Caruso, the Bulls seem to signal that they're ready to take a temporary step back in order to build a better roster for the long haul. They should have a good pick in the loaded 2025 NBA draft to add another young prospect to their talented young core, which already includes Giddey, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, Matas Buzelis, and Dalen Terry. And the sooner they can offload some of their veterans, I think the faster they could realize their team's new identity. If they get to fill out this roster with enough shooters and defenders, I think the Bulls can be one of the best fits for Josh Giddey, which potentially opens up a path for him to be a solid number 2 or number 3 option on a Bulls playoff team. Sure, Chicago might have paid a premium to acquire him, but even right now, Giddey is already capable of filling up box scores, all while playing a team-first, unselfish brand of basketball, which if you're the Bulls is exactly what you want from your potential point guard of the future. And if Giddey gets to address some of his on-court weaknesses, the cost that Chicago paid to acquire him might even be seen as a bargain in the long run. But what do you guys think about the Josh Giddey trade to Chicago? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.